Thanks for listening to the Adulting is Easy podcast. This is Lauren, and I manage the Adulting is Easy blog and podcast, which can be found at realadultingiseasy.com and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Please take a second and hit the follow button wherever you're listening if you can safely do so. I'm joined today by Sean, also known as FI Squirrel. He's a proud, self-proclaimed money nerd. Coming from humble beginnings, he became passionate about growing his knowledge and wealth for the last 15 years through real estate and the stock market. Now he shares his knowledge and experience to help others forge their own path to financial independence. Thanks for joining me, Sean.
Hey, Lauren. Thank you for having me on. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
I'm excited. So our goal for today, as it is every time we do this, is to make adulting a bit easier for listeners. So we're going to discuss a personal finance topic since managing money is a huge part of adulting. So Sean, today you and I are going to talk about building a portfolio and how you got to where you are, right? A portfolio worth well over $1 million and built a lot of that in your 20s. But first, I'd like to go back and talk about how you got interested in personal finance, because I think this is a really cool story.
We kind of grew up with humble beginnings. My family didn't have a whole lot to start, and I kind of looked to friends and family to see what they did, how their families were successful. So kind of where it kicked off was when I was 18, I was dating a girl, and her parents, they were very well off. They had done a lot for their family, but they both had very regular jobs. Her mom was a nurse. Her dad was a federal police officer. And I was always impressed that they seemed to have everything together, but not some glamorous, high-paying job. So at that time, I took her dad for coffee and kind of asked him for some advice about what he did, what I should do. I wasn't scared to find mentors and ask people how they've been doing things. He gave me my first personal finance book called The Wealthy Barber. It's kind of a Canadian classic up here. And reading through that book, that's where I first learned about the power of compound interest, just basic financial principles. Why I love this book so much is that it wasn't your classic dry lecture money book. It's based as a parable. So it's telling you a story of three people and learning lessons from this barber each week. So it was a really good intro for me to personal finance. And once I understood that power of compound interest, that spark was lit in me that I wanted to learn more. I wanted to consume as much as I could. I joked with you on a tweet the other day that I had a notebook of pen and paper and a calculator where I sat there and wrote out tables of compound interest projections. And it was like a little obsession for me, learning that my money could grow, my money could work for me. So once I knew that, I just started reading everything I could, whether it be books at the library. Blogs were a big thing back then. There wasn't really money Twitter like there is now. So I was a lot more searching on my part, trying to find more mentors, more knowledge, more know-how. And then from there, I did my best to try different things. I worked as hard as I could. I side hustled through university like crazy. I didn't really live your typical 20-year-old decade. I was working full-time during school, plus side jobs, just any way I could to find a way to kind of add another income source and get ahead in a way. Don't get me wrong. I still had a lot of fun with my friends. I still went out with them. I stopped drinking really, really early, probably 21. So it made it a little bit easier for me not to blow a bunch of money on the weekend, not to spend a bunch of money on Ubers and cabs. I was the one going out with the friends and driving them home and taking care of them. It was kind of a mutual benefit of having a friend who didn't drink like me. So it was just a little bit different than my friends, but it was well worth it because all those years of building that foundation really gave me options later in life. Like now I look back and I'm so grateful that those really hard grinding years were done when they were, because now that I have family and kids, I know life is a lot different and I don't quite want to live that same pace anymore. I still work really hard, but those years of hustling and just working myself tirelessly and all-nighters for school, that's all behind me now. And now I get to kind of reap the benefit of what I laid in those years.
Yeah, that's totally awesome. And I love your point about finding mentors. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I think people really appreciate when you are curious and they do want to share what they've learned and share their time with you. So I think that's an amazing story.
I still try and do that today. Like when you're on somewhere like Money Twitter, you have access to incredibly knowledgeable people you would never run into in your daily life. I'm able to reach out through a DM and ask a simple question to somebody or show interest in what they've done. One thing I've found in life is that everybody has a story, and everyone is a part of them is dying to tell someone their story. So whether you do a podcast like you're doing, or writing blogs like many people do, or just reaching out to people and building relationships, there's a lot of people that are more than willing to share what they did. And it doesn't mean, hey, teach me everything you've done and tell me what to do with my life, but it can be, hey, tell me what you did and just take your own lessons from those stories.
Right, exactly. It's not, hey, Sean, what have you done? I'm going to literally replicate that path and have the same exact success as you. It's like, I'll ask you, I'll ask Clint, I'll ask Steven, I'll ask Tom, right? And I'll put that all together and put my little spin on it and make my personal finance life mine.
Exactly.
And I do want to talk about compound interest really quickly in case anybody doesn't know what it is. Will you explain that to them?
Yeah, so kind of the difference. I think a lot of people know that your money can make returns. And when we think about a return on money, a lot of people think of simple interest, where if you make 10% on $100, you have $110. But where compound interest kicks in is that next year, that 10% is on $110 and so forth. It starts to snowball, where it's not just your initial money that's making a return, it's your initial money plus the growth that starts to grow on top of the growth, and that snowball gets bigger and bigger in time. So if you've ever seen a chart of compound interest, it's not a linear line that's going up in the same angle. It's something that starts slow and then it starts to really build steam and momentum. And over time, that compounding works just absolute wonders, because eventually you're heading basically straight up, because your money is growing on itself and it's folding over onto itself. And it just kind of becomes a life of its own, where you don't have to start always be trading your time for money. There's a day where you hit that point where your income and your investment returns start to out contribute your work and your paycheck. And that's where the power of FI comes in.
Love it. And that's why it's so important to start early. And I think a lot of people in their 20s, I've heard people say this, I'm going to make more money later, or I'm going to start later. I don't make that much now, or I can't put much away now. But that's why your 20s, and if you missed your 20s, even your 30s is pretty early. That's why those decades are so important, right?
Yes, it's so important. I do financial coaching now, kind of as a passion project and a side income. And what I find is a lot of people that I work with, their friends and family, and I don't flaunt any of my wealth. I'm a pretty regular looking guy, but they can tell by what I've achieved that I've done really well. And I think a lot of them want me to tell them the secret. And the secret is, I started when I was 19 years old. I try and remind all of them that I know this first year and this first 5 years isn't going to be incredibly exciting, because those early years, your compounding isn't working for you yet. It's mainly driven by your contributions, your job, your cash flow surplus at the end of each month. But the real magic again starts to happen in those later years. So when I'm sitting with someone, I say, I know you want to do these things that I've done, but you got to remember that I'm on year 15 of my plan. And we're sitting here at a table talking about day one of your plan. So it's so important to start early. And as far as working with clients, my best clients, Lauren, are the ones that I start working with right out of school, or sometimes in school, because their standard of living is so thin and so minimal that once they start working, it's like, oh my God, I have more money than I know what to do with. Like they're used to living on that student budget. And then when they start to work, it's very easy for me to say, okay, let's set these positive habits in place early before you get that lifestyle creep. Because I think a lot of us might know people who start working right out of high school and they get a job they thought was a great income. And then they fast forward 4 years later and they realize like their potentials may be capped because they worked a retail job that felt like a lot of money first year out of high school, but it's not a ton of money. So I love working with people that are just early in their journey. They're young. As an advisor, I think a lot of people, those are the clients that they don't want to work with, because there's no real money to make off of those people.
Right.
There's no big book of investments. And that's kind of my niche. And the beauty is that I've done well for myself with my own investments. I have a good 9 to 5 job. I'm not in it to make money and income off of my clients. I'm doing it because I really like seeing people win. And there's nothing more than for me to, nothing more I'd love than to sit down with someone in 15 or 20 years and we're on vacation and they're saying, man, am I so glad I sat down and got started. That's kind of the biggest thing. Like you said, back to the beginning, it's just that power of time is so huge that people don't realize the importance of starting as soon as you can. It doesn't have to be when you're 20. It could be when you're 41. Just you got to start as soon as you can and get that compounding of time working for you.
Right. Just start with what you can, even, right? A lot of people, I think, say, okay, if you invest $500 a month for X amount of years, you're going to be a millionaire. But $500 is a lot to start. And I don't know if that's where you started, but that's not where I started, right? So just get started, get those habits in place, stay frugal. I totally agree. I tell people this all the time. Stay frugal after college, just for a couple more years more than
Yeah.
your peers, and you will literally be set. It's incredible.
Yes. Yeah. And so, like you say, starting anywhere. Some of my clients I work with, they started at $25 a paycheck. And it's all about building those healthy habits because eventually things will get better. Eventually you'll get promotions, you'll make more money. Eventually circumstances will change. And then you already have that habit in place and you can start ramping it up and picking up steam. But a lot of clients, I find their fatal flaw is I've known many people that have shown interest to working with me, but they say to me the classic lines of after this promotion or after this life event, we'll sit down, or I don't have enough money yet. I don't think it's time for me to get started, or I'm just going to tackle a little bit of some debt first before we sit down. And I just like shake my head because I think there's no wrong time to be starting, whether you're in debt, whether you have very little money or whether you have lots to work with. It's never a bad time to sit down and try and think of a plan, a path of where you're going to go. It's like trying to drive to a new location without any GPS or any map. Your odds of you getting there in an efficient manner are horrible. You're going to bounce around. You're going to get lost. You're going to make wrong turns. You're going to have to ask for help 30 times along the way. Whereas if you can get some kind of a guiding map and a plan of where you want to go, your chances of getting there in a straight line with efficiency are just so much greater.
Well said. Couldn't have said it better. So, in your 20s, well, I guess 19 technically is when you read The Wealthy Barber and really got started on your journey. What did you do? What were your side hustles that allowed you to start investing so young?
I just tried to pick up any jobs that I could. So at the time when I was 19, I worked at a gym while I was in university. And it was one of those big multi megaplexes that had soccer fields and pools and gyms. It had a whole bunch of stuff. It was a community center. So rather than just take one position within the building, as a university student, you could really only get part-time work. I took 3 positions in the building. I talked to all the different managers of different areas, and I worked as a Zamboni driver on the hockey rink. I worked at the front desk. I worked upstairs in the gym, and I cobbled together all those part-time hours to make full-time hours while I was in university. And the beauty of this place is I had full flexibility to give away shifts. It was all university students. So if I had a test or I had something I needed to give away a shift, someone was willingly would take my shift, no problem. So I did that. I ref lacrosse. I time kept hockey. I had a family friend who had a construction business that he always needed help with, like labor on the weekends, just doing grunt work. I would say yes to darn near anything just to get an extra bit of income. My strategy back then, I lived at home while I was in school. I was very fortunate to do that. I went to school in state where I am here. So I was able to have very, very low expenses. So my strategy was build my account up to 3,000, send 2 to my investment account, go down to 1, build myself back up to 3, wipe out 2, go back down to 1. And I did that on repeat from basically age 19 till I met my wife, till I was probably 24, 25. I just did that on a constant rate. And I just tried to grind and carve out whatever extra cash flow I could every month.
And where were those investments going?
That was kind of a progression itself. When I started, my mom worked, she called her position Girl Friday. She was an everything person for an architect and a financial planner. So she would do their books, she would manage their properties, she would do all that kind of stuff. So that financial planner that I started working with, he was like your classic insurance, mutual fund, high fee, uh, investment dealer. So when I started, I was in mutual funds that had MERs over 3%. Like it was criminal. I didn't realize at the time that it was an awful product, but that's how I started. But starting like that is better than not starting at all, is what I often tell people as well. Like it could have been better, but it got me started. It built those healthy habits of doing $50 biweekly when I was in university. And then, as I said, I would try and do a whole bunch of lump sum contributions. So it started as mutual funds. After a couple of years, I started to read and learn more, and all the books I was reading that fees are bad. So I switched to an Edward Jones full service brokerage, and he basically handed me a list of Edward Jones approved blue chip stocks that I could buy, like your classic Berkshire, phone companies, rail companies, like just really safe stuff. So I did that for 2 years working with that advisor. And then one day I went in to go meet with him and he was gone. There's a lot of turnover in that industry and he went to go work for someone else and they have some pretty stiff non-compete clauses. So I lost my guy and I was pretty upset because I had good reputation. And that was the moment where I thought, okay, you know what? I've learned enough. I'm familiar with these stocks. I'll just open my own self-serve brokerage and I'll do it myself. So I did a few more years of that blue chip stock picking type thing, just very easy, safe stuff. And then that kind of led me to cannabis stocks. Canada at the time, we were getting a new prime minister. There was a big election and he was kind of slated to win. He was the favorite. And one of his big platforms was to legalize cannabis. And I talked to a few friends about this saying, man, this could be really, really big. And I started researching obsessively and I found a few companies and I bought in pretty early and pretty heavy at the time for someone who was my age. At this time, it was 2015, 14, 15 around there. And I can't remember how old I was at the time. I want to say like 24 or 25. And I had already amassed over six figures in my investment account just from working all those jobs and grinding it out. So I used basically most of that money and I positioned myself pretty early and heavy in these cannabis stocks. And it turned out really well for me. It was a kind of a life-changing experience where I learned a lot of valuable lessons. I came out ahead financially, but I also learned that being invested with too much money in one volatile sector was murder on my nerves. I was glued to my phone 24/7 trying to read up on what's going to happen tomorrow, what companies raising money, what problems there are on the horizon. And it became an unhealthy obsession for probably 2 years of my life where I was just glued to the computer and my phone trying to research. So in the end, I joke that it almost wasn't worth it. Obviously was because it set myself ahead financially, but I learned some pretty valuable lessons about holding on too long through bubbles and just becoming too immersed in that kind of a in-depth volatile investment.
So would you recommend that approach to the average 20 something
Oh,
looking
hell
to
no.
get into investing?
Oh, hell no. No, I listen to Spaces and I hear the DeFi guys and the crypto guys and the stock picking penny guys, and I just cringe. Like I cringe because I lived it and I went through it. And again, I don't regret it because I learned some lessons. But if I had to skip the pain and the anguish for all those people, because I can tell you with certainty that I lost tons of money on stupid investments here and there, probably 6 or 7 different investments that I made dumb mistakes on. Justin, who does the Road to Wealth podcast, will have an episode coming out soon. And I kind of lay out my cautionary tale of lessons I learned and failures I lived. So if I had to tell a new person, I wholeheartedly believe that 99% of people are best suited for broad-based, low-fee index funds. I will bang that drum till the cows come home because I think there is that 1% of people that are very, very passionate and interested, and they'll do the work and they'll do the research, and maybe they can eke out some alpha over the broad market. But I'd say for it again, 99% of people, you're better off focusing on what you love in life. You're better off focusing on being really good at your job, getting promotions. You're better off focusing on family, friends, your own passions, your own hobbies. it's not, I would say again that 1% of people have what it takes to be just immersed in the market and put all their efforts into it. But that other 99%, you're better off buying the broad-based indexes, automating as much as you can, take all of your emotions out of it, and just letting the market do its thing, and accepting that return of the market. All of my clients I work with, I use a robo-advisor platform here in Canada, and it's full automation. I just explained to them that you just send as much money as you can to here within your comfort level, and you let the investments in the market do its thing with the index funds.
Yeah, I think you're right there for sure. I mean, study after study has proved the more you trade, the more you try to pick stocks, the more you underperform the market. And like you said, the stress and kind of the wear and tear on your emotions is generally not worth it. So
Yeah,
I think that's excellent advice.
and there's that saying about reversion to the mean. So as it goes, there's lots of investment portfolios and fund managers that outperform, but that doesn't mean they're always going to outperform. There's rock stars and all stars for 5, 6, 7 years, but there's no saying that they're not going to be a poor return, a poor advisor for the next 5, 6, 7 years and go right back towards the mean. So I try to remind myself that all the time. I did really well with with the cannabis stocks. I made a lot of money, but kind of my mantra that I try and repeat to myself all the time is that you're not some special whiz kid investor. You're not better than the market. Get back, like count your blessings, take your wins, but move back towards index funds. And that's kind of my ultimate plan, is that I will pick my spots with certain investments, and I'll speculate on certain things, but kind of my home base that I always want to return to and always will go back to is, if I don't have some brilliant idea, I'm right back to my full on indexing where I can just ride the wave, and then I'll pick my spots here and there. But again, I think the foundations are more important than anything.
So in your 20s, you said you lived at home for college. And then at some point in there, right, you said 24, 25, you were investing in the cannabis stocks. Where were you living at that time?
At that time, I think I had either just bought my first condo or was just about to buy my first condo. So when I was in my 20s, one thing that kind of changed my life and made me grow up very, very fast was my mom passed away when I was 24. And that was a very pivotal moment in my life. My first year university, my parents split. My dad moved out. A week later, my brother moved out. So our big family of four immediately went down to two, just me and mom in the house. And when she was diagnosed, right off the hop, they knew it was a terminal condition. I just knew that I had to do everything I could to step up and help out in the house. So at that time, I was paying $200 rent while in school just to help out with groceries and help around the house. And then after mom passed, I got it. Both me and my brother got about $100,000 from her between life insurance and her retirement savings. So I was able to use that money to buy my first property. It wasn't a rental property yet. It was just a brand new build condo, little second floor, 1,000 square foot unit. And I moved in. And when I was walking to get my mail one day on the main floor, I heard this little yippy dog just going off and barking. And I thought, oh my goodness, I would hate if some loud dog moved in next to me or some noisy neighbor. And because this was a brand new build unit, new building, there was no one beside me. They hadn't sold the unit beside me yet. So I went on that night, and I actually made a fake Kijiji ad as a rental listing. And I listed it higher than I thought I would get. I listed it at $1,500 a month. And by the end of the night, like 2 hours later, I had like 30 emails. So I thought, holy moly, like this might actually be a viable business venture. So I called up my broker, mortgage broker, the next day. And thankfully, because I had a whole bunch of money for down payments, I had over 20%. And because I had been working full time all through school, I had a strong enough income that they were able to qualify me. And I ended up buying my first rental property as the unit right next door to me. And that was my first experience with a rental unit.
And how has that been since then?
It was actually, that unit has been a dream. I had an older couple that their son was looking for a place for their parents to move into. They were from out of province. They were coming to live closer with family, and they were, all I really knew is they were a retired couple, and their rental application was a little bit vague. They didn't put any birthdays on there, any ages. I just knew they were old, but they sounded very, very good from talking to them on the phone and their son. That he said his mom was a major clean freak, the kind of lady who will dust the baseboards once a week. And I just thought, oh, that's what I need, because I personally, I'm very, very type A. I'm a huge clean freak. So I felt good about taking on this couple. They moved in. Bill and Betty, when I met them, Bill and Betty were their names, and they were the sweetest old couple. And every time I went to go check on them, I spent more time visiting and talking to them than really anything else. They just wanted to hang out and talk. And I'd go over there basically once a month to collect a rent check, change some light bulbs, dust some high shelves. Like I did whatever I could to be good to them. And they were amazing for me. So they lived in there for 7 years. They were there, the most solid first time experience for me as far as a landlord as it could possibly have gone. My unit next door, once I was married, we wanted to start a family. We moved just 5 minutes away to a house, and we ended up keeping that unit also as a rental property. So I still have both of them. They still next door to each other. They've been really, really good. The one unit that I moved out of has been a little bit more of a headache just because of turnover. I haven't gotten lucky with that long-term tenant that I don't have to do anything for. In my case, with my other unit, it's been kind of like on average every 2 years to year and a half, I have to turn it over. And again, because of the way I am, I'm going in there and I'm patching every hole in the wall from the pictures, and I'm painting one fresh coat on every wall. I'm scrubbing the baseboards, scrubbing the grout lines. Like when people move into my places, it is a brand new unit almost every single time, because I want to set that precedent that this is how I take care of my stuff. And I really stress to them that I would love for you to take care of my place as if it was your own. You hear those horror stories about rental properties, and thank goodness I've never had a bad experience. Knock on wood. It's all been really good. It's just been a little bit more hassle as far as the turnover. I typically take like 2 or 3 days off of work and overhaul the whole place. So I would love it if I had luck again to find someone who's really long term.
Aw, Bill and Betty. So cute.
Yeah.
So what are your plans for those condos? You're gonna add more? You're gonna divest? What are you gonna do?
I won't be adding more. I can tell you that with certainty. After learning more about different kinds of investments, I've kind of again fallen in love with the passive qualities of investing in the stock market, because there are no bad tenants in your investment portfolio. And if there is, you evict them instantaneously with the click of a button. So I've learned that the PETA factor, the pain in the ass factor of market investments are just so much less than what can potentially come with the risks of dealing with people as with rental properties. I think a lot of people really love rental properties for the aspect of leverage. You can take very little of your own money and really build your wealth and grow your net worth with the help of financing and mortgages. At the point where I am, I don't feel that I need to really leverage myself much more. I've built up I'm just under $2 million net worth. I don't feel that I need to stretch myself with that risk. And I know it's relative when you say risk. I've been okay with it. I've done really well with it, but there's always that what if. Again, my two units are in the same building in a condo. And I'm sure it's the same where you are as where I am, that things happen to buildings and people get these special assessments to pay for a
Yep.
foundation problem or who knows. I have two units in the same building. So if that happens to me, I'm getting hit twice, which worries me. I'm not the most diversified. A lot of clients know that I have real estate, and they ask because they know I have it. They think I'm all for real estate, and they start talking about what their goals are, and they say, "Oh, I want to have a property like you and rental properties." And I don't ever try and talk them out of it, but I do try and dissuade them from condo situations because you're at the mercy of so many people. I think single family homes, standalone places where you're not, again, having that added risk of 150 units in one building, like all it takes is one person to start a fire or one person on the fourth floor to have a flood, and it affects everybody. So my one regret is that it's a condo, that the two things that play against them is, again, you're at the risk of many people, and condos are typically a dime a dozen. Like my unit, if I put it up for sale, is the same as every other unit in that building. They're all the same. So it's really hard to stand out from the crowd if you were to try and resell it one day. For with a single family home, you can really make those changes and you add to the curb appeal and you can add sweat equity, but condos don't quite have that same advantage. So long story short, every time someone moves out, my wife begs me to sell because she's not a fan of me disappearing for 3 days to go overhaul and turn over new tenants. And she just doesn't like the idea of trusting other people to take care of our stuff, which I totally get. Not everybody's cut out for real estate. So the deal is every time someone moves out, we reassess. Unfortunately, where I am, it kind of skews my opinion on real estate because in the province I am here in Alberta in Canada, real estate has not been hot. We're a very oil centric industry, and oil hasn't been great the last 5 years. So our real estate hasn't been hot. There's other places in Canada where I'm pretty sure I read an article that in Canada, the national growth across the country was like something like 13 or 15% last year. And in certain provinces where there's like Toronto real estate, Vancouver, where Clint is, they're
Yeah.
looking at like 35, 45% gains over 1 year. And here where I am, my condos have been flat, if not declining. So I'm not motivated to sell. I'm a very logical, numbers based investor where, again, my cash flow is still positive. They still pay for themselves. They're they've been a great investment for me. So the numbers always stop me from selling. But every year, every time someone moves out, I do always consider it. And if the potential was there to make an exit, even at quote unquote break even of what I bought it for, I'd still be way ahead. They've been paying down for since 2012. So 10 coming up on 10 years here, they've been paying themselves down. So I know I've done well with them, but there's that psychological factor of knowing you're selling under the sticker price of what you bought for just doesn't sit well with me.
Well, that's, I guess, more of an emotional thought than a logical one. Because if you look
Yes.
at it just logically, you'll look at all of the numbers look fine. So I was going to ask you, but you did answer it there that you have mortgages on the two of them. So at least every month, your liabilities on your balance sheet are being paid down by other people. So there's that, which is nice.
Yes, exactly. The numbers work. So that's what's kept me invested. And for me, having an investment property where I get to write off the mortgage interest of the investment loan, I'm not insanely motivated to get rid of them. They cash flow. So yeah, it just makes sense.
What about your primary house? Do you keep a mortgage on that? Because we know the numbers on that.
Yes, we do. The numbers are about the same. Like the math right now, the money's cheap. Logic says keep your mortgage, invest everything. But we have chosen a different path. We, again, because of where our net worth is sitting, because of our progress and how well we're doing, we decided about 2 years ago to stop contributing to investments and pay down our mortgage every month with our cash flow. That's kind of our main focus right now. And despite it being wrong in the face of numbers and logic, it just feels better for us. My wife is a pediatric nurse and she's never been really crazy about the profession. She's really looking for a way to stop, to retire is not the right word, but she wants to be a stay-at-home mom. That's kind of the ultimate goal. As far as our goals go, that's goal number one for us is to get her to stay home. To do that, I think we'd both feel a lot more comfortable if we had less debt obligation and we didn't have that mortgage payment. That's for most people, that's their biggest expense every month. So eliminating that over the last 2 years and paying down our mortgage, I think we have about $120,000 left. And when we bought this house 7 years ago or 6 years ago, it was a $360,000 mortgage. So we've made a massive dent in it, and I take advantage of every opportunity I can to pay it down. And that's kind of the main goal. Chances are she's probably going to stop working before we hit zero because we don't want to wait that long. But we've made such a sizable dent that it's given us that stress relief. I know Budget Dog, Brendan really talks about this as well. Like it's a lot easier to make life changes and take a gamble on yourself and do something unconventional when you don't have that burden of knowing you have debt, even if it is cheap debt. It's still a lot easier when you're freed of those obligations.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I wanted to touch on that because I don't really care what the numbers say on that. It really has to come down to how you feel about that payment every month and how you sleep at night, knowing that if you stop paying on your house, you're not going to own your house anymore, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And we didn't feel so bad about pausing our contributions because, again, our portfolio has performed exceptionally well. And I feel like going back to what we talked about with compound interest, it's hit that critical velocity where it's making more money than we're contributing. So I don't feel so bad about diverting our income towards our mortgage pay down because the portfolio is still chugging along in the background. It's still compounding onto itself. So it's not like we're shooting ourselves in the foot by doing this.
so Sean, you've mentioned a lot your portfolio, how it's doing, your net worth. How are you tracking all of this?
Oh, my favorite topic. I'm a money nerd, as I said. So for me, I created, it was a couple of years ago, probably 6 years ago, that I created I call it my money marathon spreadsheet. And the biggest thing for me is awareness. So many people, their fatal flaw is they're oblivious to their money. They don't watch it. And then one day they wake up and say, how did I get here? So how I created this document is that, again, I've been great with money since I was 19. And when I met my wife, I kind of loosened the reins. I wasn't able to live on $1,000 in my bank account and throw two every time it hits three. Like I had to change my standards because you live with someone else, they have different comfort levels themselves. So I became a little bit looser. And then we had our first baby. We started spending lots, and those 2 years of cannabis stock gains didn't help anything. I was spending frivolously because I was making more money than I knew what to do with. And then one day I remember we were on vacation and I looked at my bank account and had that same moment where I was like, holy crap, how did I get here? Like we always keep a $10,000 float in our account. That's our level of comfort. And I think when I checked it, it was at like $3,400 or something like that. And I was
Oof.
panicked. Like I'm good with money. I coach people with money and I have $3,500. Like what is going on? So I made this cash flow spreadsheet where it's as simple as it gets. It's money in one column, money out in the other column, and then it spits out a red or a green cash flow negative or cash flow positive. And I created this little spreadsheet. I backdated, I pulled up my bank statements and went back the prior year and filled it all out. And we were negative like 7 out of 12 months. Like we were spending money faster than we were making it. And I was going against all of my advice to people, but it's because I wasn't aware. I was ignoring it. I was ignorant to the numbers. So from that day, I have done it every month. Was somewhere within the first week of the month. I sit down and my wife joins me. I give her the laptop. I have my phone with the prior 30 days of bank statement, and I just read out all the income. She inputs it. Read out all the outgoing expenses. She inputs it. And it keeps us both on the same page because when you have a bad month, they're unavoidable. Things happen. Your car breaks down, something happens in your house. You're going to have cash flow negative months. But when we have it, we know. We both have to face the music and look at the red number staring at us on the screen. And then we know for the next month, when you're going to go buy something, for me anyway, I've got that reminder in the back of my head, like, oh crap, last month was bad. And kind of my rule is never have two red months in a row. Like you can always tighten things up and right the ship. But again, if we didn't do that exercise, we could have 2, 3, 4, 7 red months in a row if we weren't aware of it. So for me, that's been the secret. I say that's the number one secret to my success is doing my monthly cash flow, my money marathon spreadsheet once a month. And it takes us literally 15 minutes. Like there's one tab where we update our net worth. And then there's one tab where we do our cash flow. That's all it takes is 15 minutes. And I wish more people would do it. I'd say I work with at least 50 or 60 clients, and I bet you five people probably do it. Like I should really start making a condition of working with me because it would change a lot of people's lives if they were a little bit more aware of their tracking.
Yeah, I think some people have this aversion to spreadsheets,
Yes.
math, money.
Yes.
And it's just like for you or we don't think anything of it. I think some people really have almost anxiety
Yeah.
around that.
I just wish people knew the power of 15 minutes a month. Like, I'm not asking them to do some insane project or some wild thing. Like, it literally is 15 minutes of just doing a check in with yourself and recalibrating your course to make sure you're going in the right direction. That's all it takes. And but you're right. I am realistic now after many years of doing this and realizing most people don't like it. I get it. I get it. People aren't jazzed about doing their numbers. And sometimes when your numbers are ugly, you really don't want to do it. Like, do I want to do my net worth update this month? Hell no. Like it's gonna be awful. I'm dreading it, but you gotta do it. You gotta be true to your plan and stick with what you're doing. And when I look back in a year or two, I'll be able to compare January 2022 to where I've come. So I'm semi looking forward to the bloodbath of my net worth update this month.
Yeah, so tracking allows you to see the past. What are you doing about the future, the goals, your GPS? What does that look like now?
For us, it's now that we've kind of reached where we are, it's not really about the numbers anymore. Probably for the last 10 years, it's all about hitting certain milestones. I wanted to hit 500,000. I wanted to hit 1 million. I wanted to hit so much cash flow. For us now, it's become a lot more about lifestyle. I jumped on a free webinar last night with Jessica from the Pioneers, and she was trying to explain to people the power of designing your lifestyle. And you don't have to wait till you're to start designing a life that you enjoy. Like so many people, I think it's one of the most common stated things from people who are interviewed who've reached that they wish they did it slower or they wish they took a more moderate, enjoyable path. A lot of people will just grind it out so hard and they'll deprive themselves and then they'll hit this really skinny FI number of like 40 grand a year and they quit their job. And I just think that's not for me. Like I could never be someone who lives off of like 30 or 40 grand a year. To me, I want to be able to live a relatively normal life with no stress and lots of options. I don't want to say I'm free from my work. I don't need to work anymore. I'm retired and then eat ramen noodles and never go anywhere. And not to say that's fire people. I know that's not true, but I just think doing this death march to hit FI and then enjoy life is the wrong way to go about things. So for now, our goals are to design a life that's comfortable. That's why my wife, that's the number one goal is to be able to have her stay home and be happier with the kids more and give us more flexibility. The way we work together is just like we complement each other in every way. What I don't do well, she does for me. What she doesn't enjoy doing, I enjoy doing for her. It's creating a lifestyle that works for the family and ultimately the goal is happiness. Like money is just a digit on a screen. Like it's not something to worship and obsess over. The whole point of money is to give us these options and these freedoms and reduce our stress and anxiety. So even for myself, I will never stop working. I know that. I enjoy working with people. I enjoy being social. Working from home right now is like a nightmare for me because I just miss people. I want to see people. So will I work my regular 9 to 5 government job the rest of my life? No way. There's no way I'll be able to stick it out till the end of my pension. But I see myself transitioning to doing FI money coaching for people. And like as it is now, I basically make next to $0 off of that side of my business. I do it because the payback for me is seeing people change their lives and get ahead. And there's certain ways I can make money that are kind of like a background benefit of helping someone. If I connect them with a mortgage broker, I get a commission. If I help them sign up for Wealthsimple or their platform, I'll get $50 credit for referring them. Like simple things like that don't take anything out of their pocket. So, but I'm not charging people mass amounts of money. I'm doing it because I enjoy it. So back to your question of what are our milestones? What are we heading for? It's just a little bit more freedom. I ultimately would love to do that money coaching as a full-time business. For me, I'm trusting the numbers and pulling the chute. I'm arguably there right now where I could do it. But then again, I look at what's happening in the market today and it stresses me out. And I think, oh, I'm so glad I have my biweekly paycheck to get me through crazy times like this. Like I know there's a few people within the community that have pulled the cord this year and quit. And I empathize. It can't be easy to watch the markets tumble up and down in times like these when you're essentially living off of your portfolio. But that's where I want to go. I want to get to the point where I can own my time. I can get up, take my kids to the bus, spend the day with my wife, book times with clients. I'd love to do more traveling. Like this last year, COVID's been tough. Like we're a family who loves to go at least 2 trips a year. So I'm really looking forward to getting back into that and just designing a life that we're happy with. Even in the job I'm in right now, right before COVID of January of 2020, before it became a big thing, I negotiated 6 weeks off and I went to Mexico. And me and my family were in Mexico for 6 weeks together. And it was just the most blissful time to reconnect and recharge. And January, the month I'm in right now, is very slow for my line of work and what I do. So it was it worked out. It worked out, and I hope to do more of that in the future.
I love that. I love everything about it. The goals, the lifestyle design. I think that makes a lot of sense. In the personal finance community, we rag on 9 to 5s, I think a little too much.
Mm-hmm.
And we say, okay, do you really want to work your 9 to 5 until you're 65 and then live for 10 years? Okay, but do you really want to do nothing but work towards fire for 5 or 10 years and do nothing outside of that and sacrifice a ton? I mean, it's a very similar idea when you think about it.
Yes, two extremes. So I think if we can find that middle ground of still working and still seeing people and enjoying what you do, like the big thing in that seminar last night was about, again, designing something that works that isn't so drastic. Like maybe if my portfolio, let's say I need $8,000 a month of what we need, and my portfolio is only spitting out 5 grand a month right now. Does that mean I need to wait another few years? Or does that mean maybe I switch jobs to do something I really, really love? Like maybe my wife, it sounds ridiculous, but she said, she's like, I'd love to be like a barista or work at a flower shop. Like if we both found jobs we enjoyed where we still saw people and still made that extra 3 grand a month, like, is that not FI as well?
Exactly. I love this idea of Coast FI. That was something that I don't think was around a few years ago when I first learned about you can get to this point in your life where your money is making you money. It's not your time anymore. And it was like an all or nothing thing, right? Either you were working or your money was, but you can have this middle ground where your portfolio continues to grow and you work just enough to pay your living expenses. So I think
Exactly.
that makes a lot of sense. And I love that idea. And it's funny when you were talking about the numbers, you're like, well, if you look at the numbers, I'm technically FI or whatever. And it is weird because my husband and I did the same thing recently. And I was like, probably if we both quit right now, we probably could. We probably would be fine, which has been an odd realization because I pictured it as being this like super obvious thing that happens, right? Where it's like the world stops and little birds flutter around and angels sing from the sky. It's like we've made it. But it's really not like that. It's really not like that.
It's almost semi-stressful because I feel this pressure that I need to now, and especially the circles of Twitter. Like I look around all these amazing people pulling the cord, betting on themselves, starting these businesses, and I think, oh, good for them. Like I try my best to live vicariously through them because part of me wants so badly to do what they do, and I feel pressure that I should be. But at the same time, personal finance is personal, and I quite enjoy my job. I quite enjoy what I do. I'm not motivated to be leaving at any time. And me and you have joked before that I know all it takes is one change of boss or one change of environment. I have the option. I always have that card in my back pocket. And that's kind of a powerful thing about reaching FI, but it doesn't mean I have to do it the second I hit that number. And you and your husband, you guys can keep doing what you're doing. You don't have to pull the cord and stop just because a spreadsheet says so.
Well said. And I think we don't see how long people were at their FI number before they leave either. We see them pull the cord, but I think some of them delay 6 months, a year, 2 years also.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there anything you want to add before we wrap up?
If anything, I just want to bring kind of a focus to the fact that my 20s and 30s have looked drastically different, and my 20s were my hustle and my grind years, and that's where I really set myself up later. And we talk about we talk about finding the balance, and it's good. It's good, but I think sometimes when you're early in life, if I can speak to any of the younger listeners, that if you can find a way to it doesn't have to be drastic, but find those ways to set yourself up later, those little investments. If you can learn from someone like yourself or Clint or Tom and get into real estate early, or just start setting aside 50 to $100 a month early, just do those things that can really set you up later. Because again, I see with a lot of people that are my age and they want what I have now, and I got to remind them that you guys are on day one and you got to get started as soon as you can. So yeah, my big message to people is that there's going to be grinding years, and there's going to be years where you have to live life a little bit differently. Part of being FI is choosing to live life a little bit different. Like maybe you don't have a brand new car all the time, or maybe instead of buying a 2,400 square foot house, maybe you're buying a 1,500 square foot house. So you got to kind of pick your spots and think about future you, and try and be your best friend to your future self, and set them up as best as you can.
Be your best friend to your future self. Love it. Managing money is a huge part of adulting. A little bit of knowledge, like what Sean has shared today, goes a long way. So, Sean, why don't you tell people how to get in touch with you?
The best place and only place, as far as my anonymous self, is on Twitter at FI Squirrel, or FI undersquirrel. You have to add it in the show notes, because I honestly don't even know my handle. But check me out on Twitter. Send me DMs anytime for questions. I love helping people out. And then as a free little gift on my bio, you can click on my money marathon spreadsheet that I was plugging before. Again, I think it's very, very much worth everyone's time to check out. So there's a free download there, and check that out. And then otherwise, just reach out to me on Twitter anytime. I'm happy to talk here or on Spaces.
I had my friend download that the other day.
Nice. I hope they use it.
Me too. Oh my God, you don't even know. So you can follow me on Twitter at adultingiseasy. I'm also on Facebook. You can email me at realadultingiseasy@gmail.com, or show support on patreon.com. Also, don't forget to join the Wealth Wednesday Twitter Spaces. We're doing them every Wednesday. We used to do them at 9:30 Eastern. Now we're doing them at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern. I finally convinced the guys to move them up half an hour for me. We've covered real estate, tokenized real estate, crypto, quitting your 9 to 5, increasing your income, and so much more. Thanks again for listening, everyone. Hopefully, we've made adulting a little easier for you.